Hello, Thomas Crockett here. Welcome to my channel. Here's a story from my psychedelic days called Cleopatra on the River. I saw Cleopatra on the river being swept in the current. My heart sank. If she drowned, I would be responsible. I had sacrificed her to save myself. That was the truth. There was no escaping it, no matter how many drugs I planned on taking for the rest of my life. But I'm jumping way ahead in the story. I need to go back to the beginning, to earlier on the canoe, to the moment I first called my friend Mia the name Cleopatra. She was in my boat along with Curly. There were 3 other boats besides ours. 12 of us altogether, 12 New York City kids on a river in the Adirondacks. It made no sense. We weren't outdoor kids, unless you consider the streets outdoors. Half of us couldn't swim, and there we were in canoe boats for the first time in our lives. We were only there because someone who had a cousin, who had a cousin, who had an aunt, who had a friend, who owned a small cabin in the woods. A cabin with 2 beds, 1 bathroom, 3 towels. It's a good thing we were hippies. We took showers together, shared the same towels, shared the same drugs, and shared the same beds. Curly and I did the rowing as Mia lay stretched out on her back in the middle space. Curly got his name from the Three Stooges character, who, like my friend Curly, had a bald head. He kept it shaved, which was unusual when every other guy had long hair. I rowed from the back of the boat, facing Mia, who was facing me. She wore shorts, sandals, and a tank top, and over her eyes, sunglasses. She refused to wear a life jacket, saying it would make her look ugly, like a rubber float. She smoked a joint, smiling, looking up at the sun. That's when she said, "Row, my slaves." I answered, "Yes, Cleopatra." She told me she liked being called that name because she felt like an empress. I told her I wasn't thrilled to be one of her slaves. She said I should feel honored that she had chosen to ride in my boat. I took that to mean one thing, that she liked me, that if I catered to her needs, I might get to sleep with her later that night. I mentioned we were hippies. Not so with her. She fashioned herself as an Italian movie actress. She played the part well, wearing lipstick and eyeshadow, receiving regular pedicures and manicures, getting her hair styled. No one knew where she got the money to keep herself beautiful. Rumor had it that her father had connections, which brought her monetary rewards. Why she hung around with our crowd, I couldn't figure out. But I wasn't complaining as I rowed, knowing I had the best position on the river, looking at those silky legs of hers shimmering in the afternoon light. Maybe it would have turned out well for me if only the weather had complied. The sun, which had been shining since early in the morning, suddenly disappeared behind the clouds. The warm breeze that had been caressing our skins became, in what seemed like a matter of minutes, a windstorm, until it was much worse than a windstorm with rain, even thunder and lightning. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as the weather changed, the river did as well. We had hugged the shore, but now we were being pushed out by a current that appeared out of nowhere. Cleopatra said she was cold. She wanted my t-shirt to put over her tank top. Would I be a good little slave and give it to her? I did the chivalrous thing. I gave it to her. Though the moment I did, I regretted the decision, given that the rain and wind beat down on my naked chest and back, sending shivers up and down my spine, making me hear my mother's voice, "Cover your chest, you'll get pneumonia." We needed to get to the shore. That much was clear. But the current had other ideas. It, not Cleopatra, was now our master. Whatever paddling Curly and I did, especially since we didn't have a clue about how to paddle in a current, was useless. Cleopatra shouted, "Do you know what you're doing?" I deflected the question to Curly. He said, "Fuck, fuck, fuck." I knew then it was only a matter of time. We were going to die. The black, ominous clouds and the churning waves said so. Cleopatra took off her sunglasses. She braced herself, holding on to the sides of the canoe. I reached for my life jacket at my feet. Before I secured it, the canoe flipped. I understand now, having read about it, that rule number 1 in any capsize is to stay calm. Rule number 2 is to stay with the canoe. As for the latter, I no longer saw the boat as a canoe. Turned upside down, it looked like a dead whale. I wanted to be as far from it as possible. As for staying calm in deep water, only someone with swimming confidence would give that advice. I was one of the New York City kids who didn't swim. Thus, how should I remain calm in the cold, turbulent water that was indifferent to the preservation of my life? It was not a time to be rational, not a time to say to myself, "Okay, take a deep breath, relax, you have this. Swimming is a natural act. Even dogs know how to do it." Well, too bad I wasn't a dog. I was a young man with aquaphobia. As such, I acted accordingly. I screamed, "Help!" as I slapped around, swallowing water, as I flailed my arms, trying to tread the unforgiving waves. I managed to move toward the shore, due to more to the current's whims than my mechanics. I heard voices from afar. I couldn't make out what they were saying. I had no idea whether the other canoes had capsized, whether others were also dying in the water. I heard a voice near me. "I can't swim!" I knew it was Cleopatra's voice. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. I kept swallowing water. I couldn't waste whatever breath I had on talking. Maybe Curly, wherever he was, would save her. I was not the right person for the job, incapable at the moment of saving myself. I saw the branch, not far from the shore, sticking up out of the water. Why was it there? Was it rooted to anything? I knew my only hope was to grab it, hold on to it until help came, if help came. It was either that or go under and cease to exist at age 19. I raised my hand to grab the branch. I felt something touch my hand. I brushed it away with my other hand. I grabbed the branch. It kept me upright. I didn't know until it was too late that I had brushed away Cleopatra's hand as she reached for the same branch. As the current swept her away, I saw in her eyes surprise and condemnation. Imagined her saying, "You slave! How dare you!" That takes me to where I started. Cleopatra on the river, swept in the current, while I watched, helpless, feeling dread at having saved myself at her expense. My guilt made worse when I was dragged into a rescuing boat. Suddenly, in a moment I could best describe as something out of the Bible, I saw Curly standing on top of the capsized canoe. High above his bald head, he held a life jacket. He yelled to Cleopatra, "Catch!" He threw the life jacket more than 30 yards. It moved in the sky like a bird of mercy, a holy angel, the hand of God, landing within reach of Cleopatra as she moved swiftly, her head barely visible above the waves. She hugged the life jacket to her body, no longer caring if she looked like a rubber float. She stayed above the waves, through the current, and came to a stop where the water became shallow. When our boats reached the shore, she stood up on unsteady legs. She appeared washed and spun, her hair dripping, matted to her face, her makeup smeared, her eyes colorless, hollow. Her odyssey in and among the water's waves had altered her. In a matter of minutes, she had passed go on many years of her life. Her youth had been supplanted by age. She was no longer Cleopatra. I had effectively killed that persona with one brush of my hand. Suffice it to say, I didn't sleep with her that night. When we got back to the city, she stopped hanging around with our crowd. I was the reason. I had to live knowing that wherever she went, I was a blight on her memory. The young man who had prevented her from clinging to a life-saving branch. The one who made her age well before her time. What a shame, since I had served her well as a slave, bestowing upon her a name she had loved. I hope, wherever she is today, the old lady she surely is, she at least remembers, for a brief time in that river, being called Cleopatra.